So I am a teenager and know little about the Windrush crisis. How will you describe the crisis to someone my age, since it also affects descendants of the original pioneers?
First of all, the Windrush crisis came about due to a law or a bylaw that was passed by a government regarding immigrants that came in the 1940s, specifically named the Windrush after the Empire Windrush, a ship that came in 1948 from the Caribbean, bringing in immigrant laborers after the Second World War because there was a labor shortage. So these people came in. There were several ships, but the Windrush was what they picked to name the crisis. And the law decreed that they were not resident, they didn't have a right to remain in the UK, and they had to leave. Many people were arrested and deported. These people had made their homes in the UK, they had family. As far as they were concerned, they were legal residents in the UK. They had paid into the system, they had labored and rebuilt the UK infrastructure after the Second World War. And in my humble opinion, the Windrush crisis represents everything that's wrong with the Western society with regards to immigrants.
Because the Home Office named the crisis Windrush after the ship Empire Windrush, many people now think Windrush documentation and compensation schemes only benefit Caribbeans, which is not the case.
Okay, that mistake could have been avoided purely because they named the scheme the Windrush scheme in response to the Windrush crisis, because that's what they called it. And so a lot of people who came into the UK from the Commonwealth and are immigrants and are entitled to the compensation that comes from this scheme did not know that they were entitled.
Why do you think people are reluctant to apply to the schemes?
Lack of knowledge, mostly. Information. A common misconception by black immigrants that anything that links to government could get them into trouble, and potentially a trap to grab them and deport them to places they haven't lived for decades. So it's more around fear and ignorance, lack of knowledge.
How can more people be encouraged to apply?
More information needs to be given out to their communities using third sector organizations like the Citizens Outreach Coalition to spread the information to their communities, because they are grassroots organizations. They know the people in the communities. They work with black people and black communities, so they are more likely to reach out to people who are linked to and could be beneficiaries to the Windrush scheme. So it's more around disseminating information, knowing the criteria around application and who is eligible, what's the criteria, and then they should go ahead. The documentation is ginormous. There's a lot of officialdom around the application process. So if they can make it more easy, more accessible, interpreted, it would make the job much easier and people would be much more likely to apply.
The compensation scheme does not only support people who were affected directly, but people who supported them with housing and other supports.
The scope of the scheme was widened to include people who were immigrants, their direct descendants and family, support network, people who supported them or people who lived with them and were directly affected by the Windrush crisis. They can also apply. And so all they have to know is that the criteria for application, fulfill that criteria, fill in the form. And so close family members, representatives of the estate of the deceased, and people who were directly connected with them and supported them.
What must now happen to prevent a similar crisis from happening in the future?
In my humble opinion, nothing short of a mindset and societal mindset change regarding humanity, race and immigration. If we stop looking at human beings as color, if we just look at each other as humans, then there wouldn't be a problem with things like this happening. If society would be more open and accepting of immigrants.
I'm more grateful.
Exactly. More grateful for the contribution and the value we bring to society, then there'd be less of a a repeat of the Windrush crisis.